Today, we're going to look past the surface-level symptoms of our struggles and ask a much bigger question. What if the real story, the actual root cause, is something we don't even consciously remember? Let's dig into the hidden narrative that might just be shaping our entire lives.
You know that feeling, right? That nagging sense that you're somehow too much, but at the same time, not enough? It's something so many of us feel. But what if that feeling isn't just a random thought? What if it's actually a clue, pointing to something much, much deeper in our past?
Think about it. Modern mental health care, a lot of the time, focuses on a checklist of external symptoms. Systems like the DSM-5 are fantastic at telling us what is going on, but they don't always explain why. This approach kind of stays on the surface, when the real story is often buried way, way deeper.
So, this deeper story, where does it begin? Well, a lot of psychologists believe it starts with what they call the core wound, or more specifically, relational trauma. And this isn't about some big dramatic event you'd remember. It's something far more fundamental.
So what exactly is relational trauma? It's basically an injury that happens in our very first year of life, in that crucial relationship with our primary caregivers. It's a pre-verbal wound, meaning it happens before we have language, and it shapes the very core of our psyche, influencing how we see ourselves and the world long before we can form a single conscious memory.
A really helpful way to picture this is to think of your psyche like an onion. Right at the very center, you've got that core wound. And then everything else, our behaviors, our anxieties, our coping mechanisms, they're all just layers built on top of it, all shaped by that one initial injury.
And this really drives home just how foundational this wound is. As the source material puts it, this early pain doesn't just sit there quietly. It actively influences every single layer of our personality that develops throughout our entire life.
So, what does this actually look like in practice? Well, this single root cause can show up in a ton of different ways. The source material connects it to a whole range of issues, things like addictions, burnout, anxiety, depression, and even personality disorders. The symptoms on the outside look totally different, but the root can be exactly the same.
But here's the fascinating part. We're resilient. We instinctively try to heal this inner pain. The thing is, many of our behaviors, even the ones that seem self-destructive, are actually our unconscious attempts to repair that original core wound.
This brings up a really crucial question. We all have coping strategies, right? But where's the line? At what point does an attempt to repair cross over from being a manageable habit into a disorder that actually starts to limit and control our entire life?
Let's use an example to make this crystal clear. Okay, so you have a young man who goes to the gym as part of a balanced, healthy life. That's a healthy correction attempt. But now contrast that with a bodybuilder whose entire life is dominated by getting bigger. He's driven by this compulsive need that makes him ignore serious health risks. That's when you know it's become a disorder.
And here is the key point. The external goal, in this case building muscle, can never ever satisfy that inner need. No matter how big the bodybuilder gets, he'll still feel too small on the inside. Why? Because he's trying to fix an internal injury with an external solution. It's like, as the source says, trying to carry water into a well. It just doesn't work.
Okay, so this all sounds pretty heavy, I know, but it's not a life sentence. Healing is absolutely possible, and it involves turning inward to finally address that core trauma. This is the journey from a life driven by the wound to a life of true authenticity.
So, before healing, a person's life might look something like this. They're operating from what the source material calls an inauthentic self. They might find themselves constantly drawn to partners who repeat old painful patterns, seeing the whole world through this distorted lens of worthlessness and feeling totally, deeply alone.
The healing process is really a journey back through those onion layers. It starts with understanding the problem with your head on an intellectual level, but then it has to move deeper, to actually feeling and processing the emotions tied to that original pain. By working through that history, a person can finally start to connect with and live from their genuine, authentic self.
And the change that happens, wow, it's profound. As that authentic self starts to emerge, those old, unhealthy relationships they start to fall away. At the same time, the genuine connections, they get deeper. A person starts choosing partners from a place of self-worth, not from a place of woundedness. And they finally feel free, worthy, and connected.
So, why is this perspective so important? Well,
It's a fundamental shift in how we can think about our mental health. It's about moving away from simple labels and toward a much deeper understanding of our own personal stories.
You see, when we focus on the unique dynamics of a person's struggle, instead of just slapping on a diagnostic label, the entire approach to care changes. It becomes more empathetic, more personalized, and you know what? Far more effective, because it's actually tailored to the real root of the problem.
And what this all comes down to really is empowerment. A diagnosis tells you what you have, but understanding your personal dynamics tells you why, and that why is the key to genuine healing. It's not about accepting a label, it's about understanding your story.
So, we'll leave you with this to reflect on. If you could move past the symptoms to connect with your most genuine self, what would change? What could living more authentically unlock for you?